Hi dear all. Today I am sharing a video on anthrax fever, which is a very important topic. The term anthrax fever includes both the typhoid fever as well as the paratyphoid fever. The typhoid fever is caused by the Salmonella typhi, whereas the paratyphoid fever is caused by the Salmonella paratyphi A, B or C. If we talk of the Salmonella, it is a gram-negative, non-lactose fermenting and a flagellate bacteria. Humans are the only reservoir for this organism and it is transmitted by the fecal-oral route. So wheresoever the conditions are poor with the poor sanitation, poor water supply, they are very prone for the development of the anthrax fever. The infective dose for the anthrax fever is 10 to the power 3 to 10 to the power 6 organisms. Now what happens is whenever a person consumes the infected food or water, this organism enters orally. It survives the gastric acid and on reaching the small intestine, it penetrates the mucosa and then it infects the lymphoid follicles and subsequently to the mesenteric nodes, liver and spleen. It multiplies in the reticuloendothelial system. Also there occurs the Peyer's patches hypertrophy. Now it will hematologically spread to the liver, spleen, bone marrow and gallbladder. The incubation period for the anthrax fever is 7 to 14 days. Now, after the hematogenous spread, which is occurring to the liver, spleen, bone marrow, gallbladder, and Peyer's patches, there will be the onset of the clinical manifestation of the anthrax fever. If we talk of clinical manifestation, the typical is there will be a low grade fever which will show the stepwise increase, peaking to as high as 103 to 104 degrees centigrade by the end of the first week. Also, there are GI symptoms in the form of nausea, anorexia, abdominal discomfort. There may be diarrhea or constipation. Other features like headache, malaise, or disturbed sleep may be present. If we see the physical findings, they will be present in the form of the coated tongue. There may be tumid abdomen. Sometimes hepatosplenomegaly is seen. Also, rashes in the form of rose spots are seen. Now, if we talk of complications, the most common intestinal complications are bleeding and perforation, which are seen in the second and third week. Now, why this bleeding occurs is bleeding occurs because of the erosion of the necrotic Peyer's patch to the wall of the vessel. Uh, it may be mild, it may be life threatening, while the perforation is a dreaded complication. It may be fatal. Another complications we see are neurological complications in the form of delirium, coma, obtundation, stupor, shock or ataxia. Also there may be splenic or hepatic abscesses. There may be hepatitis, cholecystitis, pneumonia, meningitis, DIC or psychosis. So basically if we see the complications, so there are intestinal complications in the form of bleeding and perforation. There are neurological complications in the form of delirium, coma, obtundation, stupor, ataxia, encephalopathy. There may be abscesses in the form of hepatic or splenic abscess. There may be hepatitis, there may be cholecystitis, there may be meningitis or pneumonia, or there may be DIC. So these are the complications we see in the anthrax fever. Diagnosis. Now if we see the diagnosis, so basic investigation if we see the CBC, so leukocyte count may be normal to low, there will be absolute eosinopenia and also there will be neutrophilic predominance. In the later phase of the disease when it is advanced illness, there may be anemia or thrombocytopenia present. If we see the liver function test, there will be mild increase in the transaminases in the form of raised SGOT and SGPT. CRP is high, which help us in differentiating it from the viral fevers. Also, if we do the USG, there may be mesenteric adenitis or splenomegaly present. But the gold standard for the diagnosis of typhoid fever is blood culture. And if we see, the sensitivity is greatest in the first week, which is around 90%, but it falls to 40% in the fourth week. For Salmonella, it is a very easy organism to culture. The medium used are either bile broth media is used or the advanced culture like Bactec is used, and the sufficient blood need to be collected. So for that we need 10 ml of blood in the adults and 5 ml in the children, and blood is to media ratio is 1 is to 5, which has to be maintained. Also we can do the bone marrow culture. Although the procedure of bone marrow is like we don't do as a routine procedure in all the children, and if we are going for some reason for the bone marrow, then we can send a bone marrow culture, but the yield is higher as compared to the blood culture. Another investigation we can do is Vidal test. Vidal test is detection of the presence of the IgG and IgM antibodies to the H antigen and O antigen. If we talk of H antigen, it is a specific antigen. H is a flagella में जो antigen होता है, that is H antigen, while O is a somatic antigen which is common to the paratyphi and typhi. This O antigen is present in the cell wall. If we talk of anti-O, they rise and decline early. while anti-H they rise and decline late. What we need to see in the Vidal test is ideally there should be two titers available, and there should be four-fold rise in the antibody titers in the two samples to make the diagnosis of the typhoid fever. But what we can do is we can also take a single titer of at least 1:60 for O and H positivity. So we can make the diagnosis. But during first week these antibodies won't be present. Also there may be an amnestic reaction which may lead to the low sensitivity. Also there may be cross reactivity to the other infections. Also the antibiotics may change the result. Now after making the diagnosis we will proceed for the treatment. So if the child is able to take orally, is not having that severe illness or complications, then we will treat the child at home with the oral antibiotics. But if the child is having complications, having persistent vomiting, abdominal distension, or the oral intake is very poor, then we need to give IV antibiotics with the admission of the child in the hospital. Now the resistance is again a common problem in the Andric fever. The antimicrobial sensitivity has shown a changes over the decades. Initially, the chloramphenicol resistance was noted in 1972. Following that, in 1990, there was a multi-drug resistant typhoid fever, which showed resistance to all the three drugs that were chloramphenicol, ampicillin, and cotrimoxazole. Then we moved towards the fluoroquinolone, ciprofloxacin, and other, but they also showed in the last decade increase in the MIC. That is, there was increase in the minimal inhibitory concentration of the ciprofloxacin, and there was resistance to fluoroquinolones and nalidixic acid. Then there was also increase in the resistance for the ceftriaxone due to the novel type of beta lactamases. If we talk of the empirical therapy, till the culture reports are awaited. So in uncomplicated fever, the drug of choice is cefixime. We give it with a 20 mg per kg per day. Azithromycin is another drug that we give as 10 to 20 mg per kg per day. Other drugs are chloramphenicol, amoxicillin, and cotrimoxazole. They are the second line drugs. Then for the complicated or severe illness in which we need to give the IV antibiotics, we prefer the IV ceftriaxone and IV cefotaxime. And once the defervescence has occurred, we can switch from IV antibiotics to oral antibiotics. The total duration of antibiotic has to be given for 14 days. Although there are relapses which occur in 5 to 15% of the patients, and these relapses are more common with the beta lactams like ceftriaxone, cefotaxime, cefixime. And another thing, there is a chronic carrier state which is seen in 5 to 10% of the patients, which may shed this salmonella in their stool for up to 1 year. Thank you.